next speaker has traveled all the way from across town to be with us this morning. Some of us just get to come here once every couple of years, but Mr. Jeffrey Khoo is a native Singaporean. He's the head of food and agribusiness sales and vice president at Swiss Re Corporation Solutions Singapore branch. In '94, he graduated with honors from the National University of Singapore in botany. Prior to joining Swiss Re, he was the director of agribusiness at a private equity firm called Codex Asia. He was previously the deputy CEO of Green Agritech International Limited, a fertilizer manufacturer in China. And he's also been the general manager of an agricultural and biotech company called Guangzhou IFA. He is currently the chairman of the Finance Subcommittee at the National University of Singapore Society and advisor to the Myanmar Rice Association. Mr. Khoo. Welcome to Singapore.
Thank you. Okay, a little bit about myself. I think it's all been mentioned. So, where's the button? This is the next one. Yeah. Okay, a little bit about Swiss Re. Okay, Swiss Re, we are one of the largest insurers in the world. My particular area would obviously be agriculture insurance. So we have been, we're all over the world, as you can see. We are based out of Zurich, and then we have an office in Singapore, in China, and many other places. Right? Okay, don't worry about taking photos for that. I'll put this all up on LinkedIn. All the slides will be there. Okay, so you don't need to take too many notes. Just listen. Okay, I'm going to get into numbers very quickly. Now, Swiss Re is very good in terms of recording and studying natural disasters, right? Because we are an insurer, we need to understand this. So we have a Swiss Re Institute, and we periodically come up with publications to talk about natural catastrophe events. Now, I'm going to run through some numbers, very headline numbers quickly. So this is, let's look back last year, right? 2017. So 2017, all in all, we had 301 natural catastrophes, you know. And as you can see from here, the blue line is going up, right? There's still an upward trend in terms of natural catastrophes, right? So doesn't look too good. And at the rate it's going, there's actually going to be a lot more, right? So let me bring some numbers in. Okay, let's look at 2018's first half of this year, right? So the good news is that compared to last year, it was better. Okay, so we had lesser natural catastrophes. Okay, I believe this is the one. Yeah. So if you look at 2018, natural catastrophes was 34, and basically, the economic losses was 34 billion, and then here was 58, right? So it sort of went down, right? So, and also interestingly, in terms of the insured losses versus the non-insured losses, there was an increase in the amount of losses that were insured, which is a good thing. So it's slowly moving up. I think people are understanding that they need to get insured, otherwise nobody's going to pay when the typhoon hits. Okay? So, of course, there are all these other events that happen globally in this part of the world. We have it in earthquakes in Taiwan, dry weather, and floods and all that, right? More so for the coming, the next quarter, actually, the third quarter. So let's talk about Asia, right? In the 1960s, we're talking about maybe, as you can see from here, 22 natural disasters, right? And now, in 2017, we actually have 141, and I expect this to actually grow, right? So, according to the World Economic Forum, this is the #1 trend. I think it's quite obvious. You read the newspaper every other day, you watch your Channel News Asia, and you see these things happen very often, right? So let's look at what is actually insured in Asia. Now, economic losses for Asia was 31 billion in 2017, out of which only 5 billion was insured. That means someone else, mainly smallholders and corporates and all that, has absorbed the remaining $24 billion worth of losses. So they were not paid for, right? Okay, let's come to our sector of it all, right? Agriculture. So if you can see, this is an FAO study, right? As you can see, basically the biggest damage done, this global, is from drought, right? So drought has actually caused the most damage, right? And obviously it would be to crops, right? Because they are all sitting outside in fields, right? So drought is the major thing globally. However, interestingly, for this part of the world is different. Now, this is Asia versus Latin America, Africa, and all that. So you will see that in Asia, the biggest issue is actually flood, right? Of course, there's some drought, right? And of course, storms. But if you notice this, right, it is worse in Asia than probably anywhere else. So you actually have more disasters here, right? Every other month, in fact, sometimes, than anywhere else. So all this actually has to be insured somehow. I mean, a good example would be what has happened in Mangkut, or we call it Ompong when in Philippines, right? They have lost enough rice to feed Singapore for 1 year. So, I mean, that's a lot of rice, right? So, and a lot of it is going to get unpaid. Farmers are not going to be pushed back many, many years, right, before they actually pay this off. Now, who's going to pay for all of that? At this point, no one, right? So, insurance needs to kick in at some point. Now, this is more closer to home because I worked down from global all the way down to, the area that we're sitting in now, right? So you can have a lot, and this is just recently, right? Just July, September, right? Excuse the typo of the age there, but so we have it in Vietnam, heavy rain, Laos, and Philippines, as I mentioned to you, the very huge typhoon that went through. Myanmar also likewise flooding, Indonesia drought, right? And all this, well, within 3 months, right? And so I think this has not been calculated in terms of the losses yet, but I will assume it will be actually quite a big number. Now, how do we go about protecting it? Like, I mean, the truth of the matter is that at some point of time, this risk has to be transferred. If it is not transferred, there will be severe consequences because you may or may not know, I think probably you will know, that most of the world's food is produced by smallholders. And these guys are not really insured. And if they stop producing food, then we're going to have an issue. So, now how does Swiss Re mitigate this? We work with governments, we work with corporates, and we've done quite a few covers, so I'm going to explain to you how we go about doing it. Now, here are input suppliers, right? So in the event if there's a drought in Thailand somewhere, the fertilizer company cannot sell the fertilizer. Either the guy doesn't have the money to pay for it, or basically they don't need it at that point in time because the drought is too extended. So it affects this guy here. So, and the rest of the players along the stream, right? So if there's a drought here, there's not enough rice, the logistic guys cannot shift the rice, right? Cannot move the rice, transport it, and therefore, they lose business. So Swiss Re has multiple ways to actually insure this value chain. I will not go too much into details for that, but in a nutshell, we look at the value chain when it comes to insurance, right? Now, what is the value of it, right? I think these are actually, I would say, quite straightforward in the sense that stabilizing cash flows, lowering weighted average of cost of capital, and of course producers who may not be able to supply the crop volume, and then they have to actually honor the contract, and they might get sued for it. Then producers have difficulty repaying loans; they take loans from banks. Now this is a big issue, with smallholders particularly, right? When the drought hits or the flood hits, they've got no way to pay. Reduction in sales of input suppliers. I'm sure some of you will face this. You're going to have reduction in sales because they can't buy. Logistics companies underutilized and so on and so forth, right? So, and of course, NPL, right? Now, how do you actually go about insuring this? Now, normal insurance, let me explain to you like a car. You go for a drive and somebody knocks the car and then, okay, fine, someone will check. Do you knock it yourself or, how was the damage done, right? You cannot do this to millions of hectares of plantation. This is simply not possible. And then if you do this in countries like Indonesia and you send a loss adjuster there, the first thing he's going to do is to see what have you written. If you did write something very positive for him to get back his claim, you probably will not get out of his plantation alive. So this is an issue. So what we have come up with is a more of a parametric kind of cover, where we actually use third-party data, weather data, to actually pay out the client. So normal insurance would mean loss or damage to physical assets, whereas for parametric, which is an index cover, using third-party data, we basically use, for example, a weather station, and the weather station says, hey, there are 2 months of no rain. And based on that data, we just pay. That's it. We don't check, we don't do anything else, we just pay, period. right? So it's very clean. The recovery for normal insurance is based on actual loss. If your car was damaged, they'll just sort of tell you, okay, how much is the bumper and all that, and then they'll return that back to you, right? But this is different. We pre-agree, right? We pre-agree how much to be paid. It doesn't need to cover everything. It covers a little bit, that's fine, right? So we sort of mitigate that. Now, in traditional insurance, there's this thing called basis risk, which means that if the farmer doesn't read that policy well, and he says that your trees need to be 3 meters apart, and you did not grow it 3 meters apart, guess what? The insurance company is not going to pay, right? So there are things that, they are there, right, in the policy wording. Now, for parametric covers, it's clean. 3 months no rain, your weather station reports, we pay, period, there's nothing. So this one is about 30 pages thick of policy wordings. This one is 10 pages, very clean. Loss assessment, sometimes, as I said, you've got to go down, take a look whether the trees, for example, forestry, there's a fire. How many trees are recoverable? All this, the loss adjuster go in and check, did you actually, burn the tree yourself and all that? So all this stuff will come into play, right? And this may take years to actually work through before there's a payout. But in our case, when we do it this way, and it's very transparent, it's usually within 30 days, the check goes out. And it's very necessary. The farmer cannot wait 6 months, 1 year to actually for you to pay here. Either hang himself or already gone bankrupt, right? So the term for this is usually annual, but for parametric, we can say, okay, fine, we only insure 6 months, maybe the typhoon period. The structure, well, this is coming to be a bit more complex, but basically we will talk to the client, know when is risk period, and then decide which period to insure. Okay? Now, I'm going to go through case studies. So the best way to go about it is to show you examples how this actually works. These are real-life examples. I can't tell you who are the clients because we have obviously NDAs with them, but these are cases that actually happened, and we've been insuring them for a number of years. Okay, now this is what I call the cat in the box structure. This cat is not, I would say, your household cat. This is a catastrophe. Okay, cat stands for catastrophe. Okay, so cat in the box is catastrophe in the box. So let me walk through. Now, I was mentioning using third-party data, right? So the third-party data here is the Hong Kong Observatory or the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Now, why 2? Very simple reason. In the event that the typhoon was so strong, the Hong Kong Observatory got wiped out, we need to actually have a backup, right? So, insurance, we actually do have our fallback methodologies here. Now, what is the underlying? Forget about this wonderful word, but it basically means that when the typhoon goes through, okay, maybe I'll walk you through this way. Now, if you look at it, this line, this wonderfully colored line, right, and all the wonderful colors there, it represents different wind speeds going through. Now, when a typhoon hits, all this will be actually online. You can actually see it. I don't know if any of you in this room are from Hong Kong. If you are, and Hong Kong is quite prone to typhoons, you will go to the Hong Kong Observatory website to look for this. And it will actually show the typhoon going through, where it goes through. And at every 6 hours and sometimes 3 hours interval, it will tell you the wind speed. Okay? So how do we use this to insure our clients? Now, we have a client that is in Guangxi, Guangdong, and Hainan. Now, this is Hainan Island, Guangxi, Guangdong. Yeah. So now, how does this work? They are an input supplier company. They sell inputs, and they sell inputs into these 3 areas. So they sell inputs to the banana plantation companies here, right? So they sell to the banana plantation companies. So simply put, if a typhoon goes through, for those who know, roughly about 70 kilometers per hour wind speed, your trees are finito, like it's gone, right? Ripped out. So now, how did they go about doing this? They tell their clients, okay, I supply you inputs, I supply you chemicals. In the event a typhoon hits, you know what? Your handphone will buzz, I will give you free chemicals in return. So they get free chemicals in return. In fact, this triggered the first year in 2016, we paid out. Okay? So we give money to the client gives free chemicals to the farmer, right? So that's actually how it works. Now, coming back to how the structure works, the structure goes, so let's say for example here, right? The wind speed was 32 meters per second. It goes through here, and sometimes it catches, the speed increases or decreases. So it goes through here, and there are 3 reporting points, right? So long as one of the reporting points is the trigger, which we have pre-agreed at 41.5. In this case, it's 45, right? We agree at 41.5. So it is above 41.5. So we pay. That's it. It's straight up. So it's immediately, it happens, it's immediately, right? So within 30 days, in fact, we gave out the check in 2 weeks. Okay, so it's a very simple structure. Now, you may say, hey, would it be circles, squares? Now, we have done other deals where we actually draw a line only, just a line. Any typhoon passing that particular line that affects, let's say, the fishing village here, we pay. Right? So, these are the interesting structures that we call parametric. It's pretty hot now in the industry, but Swiss Re is the leader in doing this. Right? Okay, this is just to let you see what happened when Mangkut passed. So even when Mangkut passed, you will be able to see this at the Hong Kong Observatory, right? Along the way, the date, the time, the wind speed. Now this is no joke, this is 240 kilometers per hour. This is coming to about Cat 5, right? Nothing will survive that. You know what I mean? Basically, rise and all that. So I usually tell my colleagues who are doing irrigation, crop technology and all that, right? Yeah, I mean, it's good, I mean, resilient rise and all that, but no matter how resilient, you're not going to survive 250 kilometers per hour wind speed. It's not possible. Okay, now that's just one example. That's in China. Now I give you an example closer. My neighbor, our neighbor, Indonesia. Right. So I'll tell you the structure and I'll tell you how we go about doing it. Now Indonesia suffered from drought. You saw that earlier on, right? That there was a drought also earlier this part of the past few months. So how do we go about doing it? We pick a weather station near my client's place, okay, and we decide on a particular trigger, be it how many months and all that, or I mean, how many weeks of no rain or accumulated rain, and then we pay out based on it. Okay, so the structure can be used. We can use rainfall, temperature, wind speed, whichever. I mean, this is third-party data. It's from the weather station. It's not owned by Swiss Re. It is not owned by my client, right? So it's pretty much neutral, right? So we use the weather station data, and so this can be structured for excess or shortfall. Now, I mean, likewise. You face the problem of too much rain, right? So we can also base it that, oh, if there's X amount of rain within a period of 1 month, then we agree to pay, right? So this is an example in Indonesia. This is a pineapple plantation operator. They suffer a lot from drought, right? So the growing period is within this month, and you know, if a drought hits this month, it will actually affect the quality of the pineapples, right? Sometimes even worse. I mean, they actually fail to ripen altogether. So in this case, because there's no weather station nearby, we use their satellite data. There are a lot of satellites floating in outer space now that you may not know, but they actually provide data and a lot belong to NASA. So how do we go about it? So what was pre-agreed was say, okay, for 4 months, if it's less than 400 millimeters, I suffer damage on my plantation. So Swiss Re, Jeffrey, I want to be paid if it's lower than 400 mm. So what happened during that 4 months? This was, I think, was 2012 or 4. It was 350, right? When we took the data at the end of 4 months. So we had to pay them 2.5 million. Now, how come 2.5 million? We work this way. Every millimeter down from 400 mm, we pay 50,000. So we pay based on severity. So by the time it hit 350 mm, we basically owed them 50 mm worth of rain for that month. So we multiply that out and then we pay them 2.5 million US dollars. Now, this 2.5 may or may not equal to that exact loss. No one knows actually, right? I mean, you know, how much of, I mean, because it's a wide area. It is just a hedge. It actually prevents them from having further losses. They could even potentially make money out of this, you know, to some extent. Hopefully not, but you know, because if they actually insure more, you know, it's possible to do that, right? But having said that, it's more of a hedge. Now, I want to talk about another cover. Okay, the other neighbor in Malaysia, right? Okay, so what do they suffer from? I'm sure you heard about this El Nino effect here in this part of the world, and it affects production. And one of the things that it does affect actually is palm oil production. So as you can see from here, this region suffered the strongest El Nino in 2015, impacted yields for 2 consecutive years. Now, why 2 consecutive years? What happens now doesn't show its effect immediately because it affects the fruiting of the palm oil, the male and female flowers configuration, and therefore lesser yield the next year actually, right? So this impact is felt later. So there is an impact, and this is a commodity play, and therefore there's a lot of money to be lost here. So what do we do? Now, the interesting thing about Malaysia is that they actually have this wonderful site, actually, where they actually have all the yields of every single state in Malaysia for the past, I think, 10 over years. Right? every state, the yields, okay? Now these yields are not pure raw palm oil, as in the oil itself, the data, but the FFB, the fresh fruit bunch, the yield, the real fresh fruit bunch, right? So this is all reported, right? So what do we do with this data? Now, likewise, like the weather data, we actually price based on the volatility, right? How much volatility, and we price on the volatility. We use this data to price the volatility. So put it simply, if we agree on a certain yield in your plantation area, and the yield reported at the end of the month or end of the 3 months by the government is lower, we pay you, that's it. And of course, all this would have been affected mainly by weather. There will be situations where, okay, fine, in this particular place, we have a lot of Indonesian workers, they went home to Indonesia and didn't want to come back. Yes, of course, that will also affect the yield. But more likely it's because of weather conditions. So, this is an example, right? We agree on an area insured, so let's say my client, this is a real case, 5,000 hectares, this is in East Malaysia. The benchmark yield is, this is the average yield for the past 5 years in this area, 5 years, right? So how much money does he make? He makes, say, 500 Malaysian ringgit per ton, okay? And we look at the annual data. So in the event the yield was greater than 20 tons per hectare, which is good, I don't pay him anything, right? Because it's a good year for him, the weather didn't whack him, it was good. Now, in the event that the tonnage dropped, the average tonnage dropped, then I start paying him. So it dropped by 2 tons, the average. So what I do is that he's got 5,000 hectares multiplied by the amount he earns per ton, minus off the difference, which is 2, and I pay him 5 million Malaysian ringgit, right? So the big question always people ask is, what's the correlation? I mean, so what we did was this. We convinced the client very clearly, give me your data. This is my client's data. This is their area, which has been Toulouse data, and guess what? It's a 98% correlation. Which means that really, if the event that your government's data drop, your odds are at a 98%, yours will also suffer a drop. So we use this and we pay them. It's very clean. And then they cannot wait for 6 years for me to pay. So this will come up within 30 days, the check will go to them. Okay, so we call it POC for the fun of it, palm oil protection. So it pays within 30 days, no loss adjuster. I don't go down and check, what happens to the palm oil trees. The policy wordings are very simple to understand, no heavy jargon, it hits. The data, depending on it could be at the district level or or at the state level, and it's neutral, right? Swiss Re doesn't own this data, the plantation doesn't own this data, it's government data, right? And it can be tailored to suit the client, right? So, as you know, palm oil is commodity, so it can be used for hedging activities and quite a few other ways, right? You use that. So, policies, insurance policies always have exclusions, things that we don't pay for, which I just now was alluding to you that the trees, if they are grown too far apart, we don't pay and all that. But we don't cover for war, terrorism, nuclear reactions, and sanctions, but these are pretty much standard in insurance contracts, right? Everything else we pay. So I had a client that asked me, what happened if a troop of elephants walked through and just started destroying that place, and then the yields dropped? Guess what? I still have to pay it, right? Or a disease hit the palm oil plantation in the state, I still will have to pay. It doesn't matter. So long as the data shows a loss, I pay, right? What happens when the data is not published? We usually have a fallback. In this day and age, you do not know whether the cyber attack hits that particular site, right? So we will have to agree upon a loss adjuster going in, and that's a no-choice situation to actually say this was the final yield. Now, how is the sum insured determined? It's really up to the client. He wants to hedge 5 million, 10 million, it's totally up to him. Now, why is this important? On a normal case situation, when you insure a car is $100,000, for example. You cannot insure it for $150,000. The insurance company will not take it. Now, the thing about index or parametric insurance, it can be done. You can actually theoretically insure a car for $1 million, no problem, even though it's worth only 100,000. Because it works differently here, because it's based on third-party data and we don't really go and check. So in some ways, some people call this a derivative, right? But we do have certain clauses to make sure that actually this is in the realm of insurance, right? So what are the options? Various deductibles. Now, why deductibles? Meaning that, okay, there's a certain amount of loss, any operations, rice or palm oil or whatever, you'll be able to absorb maybe 5-10% of loss in terms of yields and all that. So you say, okay, fine, I don't need to pay for that. So I absorb this onto my books. So maybe the first 10% of the loss, I take it on my books. The rest of it, you guys pay for it, right? So do we do site visits and all that? Swiss Re is very strict. We do not insure non-sustainable operations. So they must have all the proper certifications. If they're a listed company, then I think it's a no-brainer. They would be there. If they're new and all that, you probably need to have a site visit to make sure there are really trees there, right? So this is actually something that we are very compliant about. I think Swiss Re, I think in terms of sustainability, I think we won a number of awards for that. Okay, so any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Khoo. And I have to say, that's the first time in 30 years that I found a presentation on insurance interesting. And the parametric insurance is fascinating. And, are there any questions from the audience?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Ivana Spitra. I'm with IFA. It sounds great the way you describe it. It's a very attractive model. I'm just wondering how you finance it ultimately with climate change incidences continuously growing, as you explained at the beginning of your presentation. Is it the number of farmers ultimately? So that's a number of customers who ultimately make the difference? Or how do you, if you look at the next 10 or 20 years, how are you going to make sure that this index model is also profitable for you?
Okay, first of all, I think we charge according to the level of the risk. Maybe I explain it this way. For example, a drought situation happens once in every 10 years, 15 years, right? So generally speaking, I would charge, for example, 10% of what I insure, meaning that if I'm going to pay out $1 million, I'm going to charge you $100,000 for that. So that's roughly it. So it is priced correctly. Now, Swiss Re, we are a 154-year-old company. We are huge. So we spread the risk around. We are not just agriculture, right? We also do property, casualty, and so on and so forth, life book, and so on and so forth. So we can spread the risk globally. So you're right. It is in some ways not easy to push, and I can tell you the main reason is that because the ones that are at risk are the ones with the least money to pay, because the smallholders and all that, it's not easy for them to actually come into it. So far, our clients have mainly been the corporates. Now, for example, the case I said about Hainan and all that, right? You know what was our rate online? That means for every $1 million that I pay out, the client maybe $150,000. That's a lot, right? I mean, when you talk about property insurance, it's like 0.3, 0.4%. This I'm charging 15%. Now, why is it possible that the client is willing to do it? Of course, this is a multinational client. Because the profits that he has are a lot larger than the guy growing the bananas. The guy that grows the bananas, his net profit is how much? I don't know, 2-3% or less. Whereas the input supply guys, sometimes you can be quite 50, 60, 100%. Because I was on the line. And at some point of time when I was selling fertilizers, I had a good net profit of roughly about 180%. Right, so it is not so easy. I think it also requires intervention from the local governments to actually come in and to do this. It's going to take a long time before they adopt it across globally. Right? I hope that answers your question.
Anyone else?
Good morning. So I'm Ezra from K+S. I have a friend that also works for Swiss Re in other countries, and I talk with him sometimes. One thing that he tells me a lot, and sometimes he complains, is about the lack of data that is always needed by the insurance companies to calculate your risk and calculate your premiums. So when he compared his region, which is Brazil, with the United States or Europe, where they have thousands of those weather stations everywhere, and they have histories of years of data, and then you go to many countries where you don't have that. So how is this situation here in Asia, and how are you dealing with that in your business?
Okay, that's a very good question. It is a real issue that we face. For example, we're talking about Malaysia. I showed you the palm oil data and all that. Not every crop has that kind of wonderful data. In Indonesia, some of the data I would say is questionable. In Thailand, it's also questionable. I've spoken to the data providers themselves. They say, well, you may not want to use this. Now, I think the way to go about it is, number one, we start with weather data. That is international data. We have all the weather satellites, so that is clear. We can do that first. The other thing is that we could potentially start with very high deductibles to say, okay, fine. We use your data, but we put a high deductible there, which means that you take more of the risk, unless it's a very serious situation like 80% of the crop is destroyed, then we start paying. So we could start from that and slowly grow. Now, the challenge is this: Asia has only started collecting data recently, so we start talking to some of the governments, yield data and all that. Recently, and what I mean recently is not because of any other reason, it's because the previous data was not properly collected. Now, yield data can be based on area harvested, area planted. So actually, what data was used 10 years ago is actually not the data that's used now, because it's not comparing apple to apple anymore, right? So it has to be consistently the same. Then we can sort of work out the volatility and then price it. So you're right, there's that issue. So we have to be very creative, right? We have to find other ways to hedge it. We have to say, okay, fine. I'm sorry, in Indonesia I cannot use the data, but if your business is correlated to Malaysian data, we can use that. So basically, we are in the early phases of it. So it'll be mainly weather station data, and then following by the local data, right? I hope that answers the question.
Okay, Shahrudin from Petronas. I think this similar question, similar subject in terms of the reliability of data. And we talk about the oil pump. We're talking about oil pump, actually the data are different, just about a couple of kilometers away. I think the variation could be larger. We are talking not only the rainfall or precipitation received for certain area, but we are talking about different soil that having a different impact in terms of water deficit. How directly you can tackle the issue when we talk about the effect going to be the next 2 years, from what the effect actually occurred when we're talking about drought? That's the first question. Secondly, when we talk about water deficit, now we are talking about surplus of water, in excess of water, in particular like flooding occur. So it's mainly the effect due to the operational hamper due to the excess water. How do we can quantify the yield deficit or yield decline over that catastrophic happen? Okay, that's my question.
Okay. By the way, you are also my client, but you may not know that. Petronas.
Previously.
Okay. Yeah. So let me explain it this way, right? Parametric and index cover is not a perfect cover. It is just a hedge. You're right, there are certain places where actually the yield is lower, the yield is high and all that, right? So that is very important that we have to do studies with the client. As you saw the data down there, we took his numbers, we double check to make sure that there's actually a correlation. If the correlation is very low, we can't do it. We will tell it very frankly. Right? It doesn't make sense. You may have a loss and I don't pay you. So this is not good for you and not good for me, right? So, but to get really granular, to say, this guy's bought land cheaply because it's a low quality land and therefore the yield is lower, how do you insure and all that. That has to be done by the real traditional staff. We go down there, we take a look, and we still do that. Swiss Re, I would say about 70-80% of our business is still in that area, right? But for wide scope, for this kind of weather-related stuff, then we do the parametric, right? Now you're talking about flood. Flood is no easy game. Now flood is not always about excess rainfall. Flood is not always about excess rainfall. And drought is also not always because of lack of rainfall. It could also become an issue of temperature, right? So let me talk about both. Flood in particular, I've been approached by the Malaysian government and we spoke many times about this, right? But with the change and all that, I think it's hard to get across the line so soon. Flood modeling is very important. Swiss Re is very strong at this. It's not just a matter of the rainfall coming in. You've got to see the rain, how much rainfall per day, in which area, and then sort of calculate all of that and come up with a model. Right? And that model must fit actual events that happen. And so far we have done that. The event happened, the model will trigger, and there's a payout. So it will be more complicated than what I showed you just now. Okay, that will probably take an hour to explain and show you all the algorithm behind it. But we do have those, right? It's based on rainfall data. It's based on stuff like Malaysia has flood data in terms of the water levels and all that. we take into account all of those, and then we do that. Globally, I think we are one of the biggest flood insurers around too. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Anyone else? You made a lot of comparisons between parametric insurance and traditional insurance, and I know with traditional insurance often or sometimes can lead to litigation between the insurance company and the client. Has switching to the parametric had a big impact on any legal activity?
Yeah, I think, let's put it this way, my claims department is very happy because basically they're not involved, right? Because the moment the thing hits, the check goes out. So it simplifies things a lot. We don't have issues with litigation and all that. But I need to say something quite clearly is that you need to have understanding of how it works. Now, for example, if you're dealing with smallholders and farmers, you say, okay, my dear friend, 3 months no rain, you pay. We'll pay you, right? What's going to happen if there's 2 months no rain and he has crop failure? He will still insist you pay, right? So this is the challenge that you always face, right? So education about that structure, the solution must be very clear. If not, there will be so many claimants coming up. Now, we had this situation, not with my company, I've seen people actually do this, right? Say, okay, we insure the rice farmers, and lo and behold, the whole bunch of rice farmers will come to the office and they have to shift office, right? Because they say, I want to pay. I say, no, you have signed based on this, But so understanding parametric insurance, educating the client must be very clear. This is what we call basis risk. So Swiss Re takes a lot of effort to actually explain, to let them know, clearly this is before you sign the dotted line, right? Okay.
I just wanted to make a point where we have engaged some academics in Holland. They're using algorithm now to even measure the evapotranspiration, ET. And we're thinking, because this is the issue you already discussed, and there was a question about how to assess. So are you using that kind of technology? In fact, this is very new. We've just been applying it for the last 2-3 years. There's one professor at the University of Washington. He has written an algorithm where he, on weekly or sometimes bi-weekly basis, the system sends a message to farmers in Pakistan and Vietnam when to irrigate. So it's that level of sophistication now, where weather as well as the satellite imagery data is being used to measure ET on daily basis. So that can really fit into what perhaps you are assessing in terms of crop failure or even the assessment of the yield.
That's right. I think we can use evapotranspiration data. In fact, we can use, I think I would say, different kinds of data. The reason is this: at the end of the day, what do we actually do? We price the volatility. Basically, okay, there are changes in evapotranspiration data or temperature or whichever, right? And we price that volatility. That's actually how we come up with a premium rate to charge the client. So we are always very open to new indexes, as we call it, right? When there's a new index. For example, in China, we've got a fantastic number of indexes. You've got pig price index, you've got some medicinal herbs index, different yields and all that. All that can be used. Now, where's the challenge? There are two main challenges. Number one, historical data. If it's not long enough, it becomes a problem. If it's only 5 years data, 6 years data, so what am I charging, right? So if it's 5 years data and it happens one time, I have to charge 20%. But what happens in the past 20 years, nothing happened. So that's a wrong rate, right? So that's number one. Number two, the quality of the data. Who's providing the data? Will that data be published on time? That's also very important. Because if it's not published, how can I pay, right? It's based on when it's published, right? So these are also challenges that we face when we look at a new index. So evapotranspiration or any of these weather-related data indexes, as we call it, we are always open to look at it. Then we can also price from there.
We really think these are exciting opportunities because of the moral hazard problem, where farmers or agents can come, clients can come and claim, but these technologies are really now opening up a whole new venues. And the reason I bring it up is because 85% of the farmers are small. And the reason they don't want to invest in chemical fertilizers is because it's very expensive and they think the risk is very high. And if we can provide some level of reasonable insurance cover, maybe we believe, in fact, if you provide them insurance, they will invest in better technology because they think some recovery is possible. So I think in the next few years, we really anticipate weather index insurance becoming so sophisticated that insurance companies will be interested in providing even to small farmers. And the small farmer issue is small farmers are not willing to pay the premium. But it works both ways. But what I'm trying to say is this fourth industrial revolution technologies are becoming now so sophisticated just over the last 3-4 years. I think they're going to open up a whole new avenue for insurance. And if that happens, then farmers will be encouraged to buy insurance and invest more in fertilizer.
Yeah, I agree with that point. I think the main issue, because I used to grow rice myself too, so I understand how hard work this is actually. I think at the end of the day, the problem with the farmers is a sense of mistrust of insurers, right? So they don't trust the insurer, they're not sure whether they're going to pay out, right? Likewise, the insurers also have issues like in the opposite direction, right? So that has been solved. The other big issue is that I think for them to start off, there must be initially, I wouldn't say subsidy is the way to go, some sort of subsidy for the insurance, like in China they do that. And slowly with time, that subsidy must be taken away so that the normal economics of things can take over, right? But initially, the government has to start somewhere. In fact, all the large-scale insurance plans are all subsidized by the government. It starts that way, including the one in India now, right? So that's one thing that needs to start in Southeast Asia, particularly. There's not much of it. I don't know whether you have noticed it. There's not much of it, and there isn't enough. So there are actually cases where the government insures, but you know what? They only insure maybe input costs. So okay, fine, insure the input costs. What happens to the farmer after the typhoon hits? You pay him the input cost, he still needs another 4 months to grow the rice. What happens before that? He starves, right? So these things have actually got to make more sense to the farmers, and governments have to take up that step to say, okay, fine, no, we really have to do this, right? And then insurers will come behind that. So it's a constant effort. The insurers cannot come in alone, right? And of course, with the support of IFA and other large fertilizer companies, we could probably do that, right?
Azhar from Petronas. So just alluding to what Mr. Singh said also about the insurance and stuff. I think what's your view in actually there's an increasing trend of cats, of catastrophe moving forward in the next few years, and this industry is actually going to. You see that there's a more uptake on the insurance business and thereby increasing premiums in the future. Then actually it goes back to affordability by the small farmers to actually uptake this. So what's your future trend in this moving forward?
I think it's going to, number one, I at least from the numbers that I see now, I think that it's obviously going to get worse. I think most people in this room will think it's going to get worse anyway. Premiums will definitely go up. Insurance is a company. If you go break up, that's the end, right? We are basically, our job to distribute out the risk, spread it all up, right? That's the purpose of insurance. So it will definitely go up. But see, when it goes up, other things will go up too, right? Like the price of the food itself and a few other things will go up. So at some point of time, I believe that risk will be sort of spread out well enough and we'll be able to absorb it, right? So I do see at some point, not now, that the premiums will move upwards. But then again, Swiss Re is all about innovation. We can structure it differently. We can, make it more, I want to say cheaper, but make it more sensible to the client. We may not cover everything. We will cover a little bit. So it's not an easy answer. Let's put it this way. But having said that, yes, it's going to be tougher as you go along because odds are there will be more nat cat situations happening, events happening.
My name is Emil Welkom from Stanley Garden. I have a question. In first sheets you mentioned the number of catastrophes going from 22 to 141, and the 141 was representing 31 billion.
No, in Asia, that's in Asia.
In Asia. Yeah. What was the financial number in 1960s with 22 events? To have an idea on the growth of the financial impact, not only in numbers of catastrophes, but also in financials.
I would say that I don't have those numbers at this point in time, because those were just
indicative.
Headline numbers. But I would assume it will be smaller. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, so that will make the most sense in terms of the real financial damage in the 1960s, right? Because things were not so expensive at that point of time, maybe. But I mean, it's not an easy answer too, right? You got to calculate out depreciation, everything, right? In order to come up with a number. But it's safe to say that, I mean, it's obviously getting worse, that's for sure.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thanks again to both of our speakers this morning. Very insightful to see how both the banking and the insurance industries impact our industry as well as food production in general. This concludes this morning's session. There's a coffee break now, and the next session will begin here at 10:30. Thank you.